Good news, guys. That first batch of boat art that I put into the kiln at the beginning of the year is going to be coming out at the beginning of next week. Now, ever since I produced that video on how to dry your own lumber, I've been getting emails every few days or when's the lumber going to be ready, because people really do like these boat art mallets. And as I said in that video, it takes a long time to dry lumber if it's very thick, which is why this has been in the kiln for 3 or 4 months. I just know it's gotten to the point where it's not losing as much weight on the weekly balance, and it's not cool to the touch. Is it dry enough for furniture? No. But it's dry enough for our application of making these mallets, because really all I'm concerned with is it not blowing up on people, it not cracking on me and stuff like that. If it ever so slightly warps, which is imperceptible to our eye, it doesn't really matter. It's a mallet. And after this amount of time, that first batch of about 30 mallets is ready to rock and roll. I'm swapping them out and putting in the next batch. And over, up until Christmas time, I'll be processing that whole tree through the kiln. But with this first batch out, I thought I'd offer y'all that have been hammering on me about when they will be ready to tell you they're going to be ready fairly quickly. The reason why they're not ready right this second is because I plan on customizing each and every one for you. Now, I have a couple videos. One on me actually making this particular mallet, which I've been using for about 4 years. It's the one shown in the video. And one on the reasoning why I like this particular design. And I really did put a lot of thought into it. It comes all down to ergonomics. I don't want to have to grip a mallet all day long. I want it to be able to dangle in my hand and not just go flying across the room. I also want to be able to get different levels of force with it, whether I'm hitting it heavy mortise, chopping out letters, or doing some fine detail carving. And all of those can happen with this design because of the angles, the shape, the bulk, where the mass is located, and once again the design, the shape. All those come into account on how I use this and why this has been my go-to for so long and why it takes so much abuse. But in order for it to do all that kind of stuff, you have to design it for your specific hand. And I can make a general one, kind of like this, and just sell them out, but I'd rather it fit your hand perfectly so it's an extension. And what I'm talking about is 2 main distances and the thickness. The first distance is basically if you take away the webbing of your hand right to the bone and go towards the middle of your hand. That's the measurement. And if you order it, that's what I'm going to be asking for as measurement A. The second measurement is continue that line across your hand. Don't go straight across a palm, but this distance to the back side of your hand. That will be registration B. And what we're talking about is the distance from the bottom of this concave to the apex of the angle, and then to the knob on end. And if you notice, this one is slightly off for me, even though I've been using it for 4 years very comfortably. It could be ever so slightly better. And if you look at how it fits on my hand, zoom in, you can see that the apex, can you see where the light is? It's a tad bit ahead of the base of my palm. And I can slightly feel that when I'm working with it. It's not uncomfortable, but I know it could be better. So if you decide to order this mallet from me, go ahead and immediately send me an email with these 2 measurements, from the compress the web a little bit to the center of your hand and then to the outside. That way I can get that crest at the exact perfect spot, and this knob on the back kind of prevents it from sliding in your hand much. This one slides a little bit because that knob is, a 1/4 of an inch too long for me. But years of use has taught me that will be perfect. Now, those of y'all that have been following along on Instagram know that I specifically went out and saw a very special boat art tree. One was large enough that I could get nice, straight, clear grain, not too much warpage because of branch distorting the grain pattern. I also wanted the tree to have grown in a situation where it grew very straight, because a lot of times boat art trees go at a slight angle, and that would reduce any tension in the wood. And I wanted to find a tree that didn't branch off for quite a few feet. And on Instagram, I showed you the tree. I showed you our disastrous attempt at cutting it down easily, how we processed it. I then made that video on how to process free wood, and I showed you why I was processing a specific way for this exact application and how I was going to be drying it. I mean, it was a lot of work to get this specific species of wood, bodark. A lot of people outside Texas call it Osage orange or horse apple and stuff like that. It is one of the hardest woods we have in North America, but what's extra special about it is it's very springy. They make bows and arrows out of it. It's a preferred wood for making bows and arrows. In fact, the French term for the tree was boussage d'arc, bows and arrows, and since Texas was colonized by the French first, and we mispronounced terms over the centuries, boussage d'arc became bodark in Texas. So that's why we call it that. But because of its hardness and springiness, I believe it is just uniquely applicable for making a carving mallet. The density, the rebound, the fact that it just doesn't dent that much. If you look at this one right here, all these dents you see on it was because in that video that you showed me turning it, I turned it dead green and I put it to use that very day. All these are original dents from that first week or so. This stuff that I've been drying should be, it might dent a little bit, it might compress a little bit, but nowhere near as bad as this one, and I've been using this for 4 or 5 years. You can look at the date of that video. So it's a wood that's uniquely suited for mallets, and it's just not something readily available from a lumber mill. So I had to go find the tree and process it. So I really do believe that if you get a custom-made mallet, I mean, the first time you use it, you're going to feel the benefit. And then 5 years later, you'll be using it and you'll recognize all the abuse it's taken and how well it's still working. I mean, this is a lifetime beater tool. Pardon the pun. So if you want a mallet, I'll put a link down below to my website. You can order it there. Immediately send me an email of those 2 dimensions so I can customize it for you. And if you want to go into more detail on why I designed it this certain way, watch those videos on design or see me make it. And remember, these kind of sales are how I subsidize this channel. So, as always, be safe, have fun, and remember, it's always worth the effort to learn, create, and share with others.